It's an all-out sprint to the finish. Will Democrat Terry McAuliffe recapture the governor's mansion?
America is watching this race every single minute.
Or does the moment belong to a political newcomer, the Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin?
757 is going to lead this on Tuesday night. Let's bring it home, everybody. Let's go!
With just hours until the polls open, the race is too close to call. No matter the outcome at the top of the ticket, Virginia is set to make history tomorrow, electing the first woman of color to a statewide office. Will it be Republican Winsome Sears?
And I'm looking forward to the day when all of God's children can live in harmony.
Or Democrat Hala Ayala?
Everything is on the line this November 2nd, and early vote is important.
What will tomorrow's outcome say about Virginia? And what message might it send to the nation heading into the all-important midterm elections in 2022? With Election Day just hours away, it's your voice, your vote. This is it. All eyes are on Virginia, with Election Day just one day away and big statewide races all neck and neck.
Yeah, the implications go beyond our state borders. The political world calls this election a glimpse at what could happen across the country in 2022. So we've brought in political experts from right here in Hampton Roads to talk about what's at stake.
Joining us in the studio today for this hour are Mike Gooding, Soji Akamalaki from Norfolk State University, and Leslie Coggle from Virginia Wesleyan. Thanks to them and thanks to you for joining us. So let's start with breaking down the governor's race first.
All right, the latest poll from the Wasson Center at Christopher Newport University release says the three biggest races in Virginia are virtually tied, and those are the races for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. All three Democrats lead their Republican opponents by just 1 percentage point.
There are a lot of issues driving voters this year: the pandemic, the economy, and abortion. Let's break down each candidate's stance on those topics. First, on COVID-19 vaccines. McAuliffe has said he will listen to the experts. He supports requiring vaccines for students, teachers, and healthcare workers. Youngkin supports the vaccine and is vaccinated himself, but doesn't think they should be required.
The economy is still recovering from the pandemic, and here's how each candidate plans to help. Youngkin's plan includes a year-long tax holiday for small businesses that make less than $250,000 in net income. McAuliffe has called for more lending programs to help small businesses. And on abortion, McAuliffe is pro-choice. He says he will be a brick wall against any legislation that limits abortion. Youngkin is against abortion, but said he supports exemptions for rape, incest, or to save the mother's life.
Right now, we have a big lead in the early vote.
This is our moment to get Virginia moving the right direction and kind of stop this big government control that's really been a challenge for us.
Both candidates pushed early voting in the last leg of the race. We'll take a look at how many Virginians got out to vote early in just a few minutes. But now, let's talk about the importance of the governor's race.
All right, we have NSU Soji Akamalaki with us and Virginia Wesleyan's Leslie Coggle. They're joining us now along with Mike Gooding. So let's jump right into it because the entire nation is watching this race. And I want to start off with you, Dr. Coggle. How well has Glenn Youngkin done this delicate dance between suburban voters and the Trump base?
I mean, I think we can see as this race is coming to a close that he's probably done as well as you can do in kind of motivating the Trump base without being off-putting to any of the suburban or more moderate voters who've recently broken for Democrats in statewide elections.
In this race, it's been as though dog whistles have been a bit more like bullhorns. In 2006, when George Allen had his macaca moment, he dropped immediately 10 points in the polls. If that same situation happened today, do you think it would even move the needle at all, given our political climate today? Soji.
Oh, yes. And I'm sorry. Absolutely, yes. Like you said, it's not even a dog whistle at this point. It's a bullhorn. And you wonder why education is all of a sudden on top of the list. One of the reasons why we think so, it's because this critical race theory issue, it's going to actually it's turning out to be a very, very good deal for the Youngkin camp. And what I think is that this, culture thing has been around with us for quite a long time. It's not going anywhere, and it's turned around elections. And I'm hoping, but I think that this time around it's not going to be anything different. One of the reasons why this race is so close, by the way, it's because of that. The race issue it's no longer subtle, especially towards the last days. And I think that people should watch out for, how that is going to play out with the outcome of the election come Tuesday.
Well, with that said, a lot of people are saying that Youngkin is doing a good job keeping his distance from Trump, but yet he's ending his race, talking more about critical race theory, talking about Toni Morrison's book, Beloved. Is he really keeping his distance from Trump?
I'm a little bit perplexed because I'm hoping probably not too many people actually even know that Beloved is a fiction. It's a work of fiction. And because it's a work of fiction, you wonder why it's playing such an important role. This is something that came out in the 80s, by the way. And if it is playing such an important role, it's because maybe the Youngkin campaign has somehow figured out that this is something that Virginians cared about. And if they do, then it's a very good strategy on their part. But at the same time, I'm a little bit skeptical because we may have exaggerated a little bit the importance that this is going to play in this election. But we're going to see. Again, the jury's still out there. Let's see what happens tomorrow.
Dr. Coggle, a few months ago, the Wasson Center did a poll that said most Virginians self-identify as moderates, but for now they're comfortable with the policies being put forth by the Democrats. Where do you see all of that in this close race that we're having at the top of the ticket?
So just generally, I think political science would tell you, or political scientists would tell you, that most voters identify as moderates and they identify as independents even though they don't vote that way. And as a whole, your average Virginia voter is much more progressive than your average national voter. I think we're seeing that a bit in this election. It's been incredibly interesting to see Youngkin balance because he's not just pushed Trump away, he's pushed Trump away among some voters and kind of pulled him closer among others. And I think what you're seeing is that the moderate voters in Virginia that Youngkin is reaching toward are educated suburban voters who tend to have more progressive policy stances on issues like race. He's also, though, got to build a coalition with the rural voters, particularly in the western part of the state, who were excited by President Trump and are nowhere near as progressive as these moderate voters on issues like race. So this is an interesting balancing act that he's engaged in, and I think going to be a model if he wins for Republicans in terms of how they deal in states like Arizona and Georgia moving forward.
Interesting.
And Dr. Okomolafe, do you think Terry McAuliffe has any regret for that statement that he made at that last debate when he was asked about education and he said he didn't think that parents should be making teaching decisions?
It's a yes and no. And it depends on how you look at it. Should parents be making decisions? For a long time, curriculum has been left out of. Education is part of politics, there's no doubt about it. But education has always been about budgeting, about all the things other than the curriculum. You would think that the curriculum will be left to the folks who are specialists, and we're talking about professors, the academia. That's what the academia does. But in this case, it's a little bit different, though. It's a slippery slope. If we allow parents to make decisions about what is going to be in the curriculum, where do we stop? We start with the CRT, that's the critical race theory. We take out a book of fiction. What are we taking out next? And if we say yay this time, what if the next election, 2022, 2024, and somebody comes up and say, you know what? I really don't like this book, then it has to be taken out of the curriculum. We now have a playbook that we can go by. How do we say no? Eventually, if this even happens, my guess is that it's going to end up in the courts anyway, and they might be the final arbiter to this case.
All right, we're going to ask you guys to stand by. Thank you for your insights to this particular point. An election this close, voter turnout is key. The candidates in their camps have pushed their voters to head to the polls early, and it seems to have worked.
Yeah, Alex Littlehales reports on how many Virginians have already cast their votes and what that means for tomorrow's voting lines.
Between new voter laws and the COVID pandemic, early versus in-person voting numbers won't look anything like they did during the last gubernatorial race in 2017. Whether by mail or in person, more than 1 million Virginians have already cast their ballots early in Virginia, 1,142,000 to be exact. This is based on election data from the Virginia Public Access Project. In Hampton Roads across the 7 cities and areas like Williamsburg and James City County, more than 200,000 early votes are already in. 13 News Now reached out to Virginia Public Access Project. They told us they do not publicly comment on this raw information. However, they did note that if voter turnout is exactly the same as it was 4 years ago, this would mean 1/3 of the votes cast for this election are already in. Reporting tonight, I'm Alex Littlehales for 13 News Now.
All right, and ahead at 3:15, another razor-thin race for lieutenant governor between Winsome Sears and Hala Ayala.
What are the issues they're running on and what will be an historic win for the Commonwealth?